Hello, this is the Black Jester Libertari, and this is Black Jester Matters, episode 69 again, because I can't seem to get past it. And we've got well, I got some ranting about hero worship to get to. And I'll also get to some other things too, with stuff I've been discovering lately. There's one thing I've been at these freedom rallies and stuff like that, and I've been learning stuff and discovering stuff, and I checked out this website recently. This Odessa chick put the word out on it, and it was quite startling, really. It seems like she was told about the non-aggression, the words of non-aggression principle, but she didn't actually understand it, or something. She actually managed to phrase out on the first page of Librti, Librti.com, Librti.com. She managed to have a site that phrases out something, speaking out about liberty, and actually end up in the context being very anti-liberty. I'll explain. Our community. This is under the section Freedom, Truth, Accountability, and Community. This is actually on the first page in the intro. Our community is founded on the core principle of non-aggression, and individual liberty, freedom of association, freedom of choice, and voluntary association. We value and support freedom of information, ideas, and opinions, and encourage discussion and debates. Apparently, jokes are not part of that, which is an important detail. Devil's in the detail that you leave out. Let's see. We value free speech. However, it is secondary to our core principle of non-aggression. We do not tolerate bigotry, racism, sexism, and harassment, which is, of course, not defined, just like all the other guys. So if she doesn't like you, she just, like everybody else, she can call you a haymonger or whatever. This is a real leap of faith she's offering, and people have been burned so much with social media, I don't know why they would be expected to have a leap of faith. There's no room for a leap of faith with social media anymore. There isn't. I mean, this isn't even worth trying out on many levels because of this. And you click, there's no link to click, so you can email them and get some more info. There's no way to do that. I mean, I guess if I could remember her radio channel or whatever. Anyway, so here's the first funny thing. The context of it is quite aggressive, and the context of it suggests that words can be violence, you see. By stating that speech that may be viewed as bigotry or racism or sexism and harassment can also be aggressive. Now that's the problem. When granted, you might want to see fraud. Child porn is not speech, by the way. Anything pornographic is actually under expression, not specifically speech, like discussion or I've been through been through this before, but that's stuff you do. That is not stuff you talk about and debate and communicate with. And the expression, you can talk about consenting expression as a separate entity of speech. Now, which is also fine if it's consenting. But anyway, I know people will just jump on this, but on a pure scale, I mean, fraud isn't even speech, too. It's kind of like the opposite of speech, because it's like you intentionally lie. Basically, you're lying is meant to disinform, not inform, and therefore fraud is not. However, the problem is fraud is it's a very serious charge, much like doing a kid, and you got to prove it. The proof burden is very high on things like fraud too, just like murder and rape. However, that's why a lot of cults don't just shave away. Of course, the reason some cults don't shade away is the FBI looks the other way in certain cults and targets certain other cults. I'm guessing there's some play ball with them or not. So anyway, what we have here is a context that treats words as violence. It treats any subjectively bigoted or racist. Basically, it is bigoted anyway. Bigoted, racist, sexist, or now harassment. Don't you got a block function? This suggests to me that you can't even block or mute anybody. That's a little kind of concerning, isn't it? So my view is that, like, the notion of social media especially, if you got a block and a mute function, if you got that, then the only reason for the censorship is to tell people what they can or cannot read, not to tell people what they can or cannot say. Well, there has to be enough. Just mute and block already offer the opportunity to have the liberty to not see something, at least again. Which is most of the time. I mean, you can never stop from seeing something once, because you wouldn't know whether to avoid it or not unless you saw it once. I mean, some people get block lists and stuff like that, and just follow the mob on that sort of thing. But anyway, so this is kind of a disappointing thing. I mean, to hear about this on a freedom rally on someone who calls it, I think it's Liberty Radio or something, and someone who's clearly got the lingo of an ANCAP libertarian, but this is actually quite a grift. I mean, I don't want to say. I mean, maybe she was a bit of a dumbass, maybe trying to cover herself legally on something, or try to keep an app open in the store. But this she made it look like a grift if it isn't an outright grift. I mean, that was astonishing. I mean, which is probably why I haven't seen a lot of people, recommending it to me or anything like that. I mean, being a person who pushes the envelope and a jokester, of course, too, and even tongue-in-cheek level, and I will push the envelope. This is a huge red flag. Huge red flag. And I would recommend caution of just not total avoidance until that sort of thing is explained away. Because who needs that? Who needs to be burned again, right? Who needs to be burned again by a social media network again? I certainly don't. And a lot of people who get burned a lot worse than I ever have in these things. I mean, there are a lot of disappointments. And another criticism I'll have too was Freedom Rally and May Day. They had a comedian who did clapture jokes. Actually, he's been all over the scene. I mean, he was at the April 20th thing. I guess, and the Chris Guy event, and a few others. And he just did clapture humor. He didn't say anything particularly offensive. I agree with the point of view he was pushing, but we at the BC Libertarian Party had a thing called comedies without masks. Oh no, comedy unmasked. That was what we called it. And we had a few people, and they're all very funny people. They weren't doing clapture jokes. They were doing real fucking funny jokes, like Brian Bertram and stuff like that. And I mean, that was brilliant stuff. And sadly, Brian Bertram was kind of being shouted down by a Freedom Rally that went way too long, went way past 5. Another thing about the May Day event too, and this is usually the trouble with when you got these speeches, is very little ability to challenge an ideas at times, and I think that's probably why some people have doubts they work. I mean, I like the idea of sometimes, presenting your disdain for policies and stuff. Here's what I think, I hope people caught this too, is that this woman goes up and she says we need a revolution. Now it's okay, I agree, we should get rid of the monarchy, get rid of the Privy Council. And she was also talking about a top-down approach. And she was also talking about, she mentioned the American Revolution. She also mentioned that she is also an academic in this area of history. And she was talking about, my nose is as red as a drunk right now. It got that much sun. She was talking about Robespierrean revolution. She was talking about reign of terror type stuff. King Louis getting his head chopped off type stuff. Brutal, evil, leftist shit. And that's what you always have to be careful about with liberty movements and freedom movements. They can be co-opted easily. And they can also be taken over. I mean, and these freedom movements, especially over liberty movements, because a freedom movement is like you've got a coalition, right? So certain lefty populists can always slip in with a bunch of right populists, and also slip in with a bunch of libertarians. Oh, you could think, well, okay, it's a freedom rally, so there got to be a lot of libertarians here and stuff like that. And there are even some there are some socially conscious populist conservatives, and there's some standard populist conservatives, socially conservative But, you know, so like, you know, Buchanan Brigade type deal. But what can slip in underneath is, you know, your average Bernie bro or something like that. And what we ended up seeing with this woman going up is, disappointingly, and I, as also a student of history, rather fond of knowing, fond of the notion of the history of these revolutions. Well, Robespierre and the French Revolution, and also known as the Reign of Terror, was a terrible thing. It led to a right-wing reactionary situation called monarchism again, a form of monarchism, leading to an emperor by the name of Napoleon Bonaparte in a military coup. So it didn't even, it just ended up being a endless, and they even at the, now they had a national popular vote president. Macron is maybe kind of backing off on some socialist bullshit right now, but that's because people can vote a president in and out on some democratic emotional rampage on just a simple rabble. That's not good. I mean, the United States was kind of smart about having an electoral college and originally not making it an open vote for just any any idiot. Originally, you know, the legislatures were controlling how the electors were won, whether it was by a vote of landowners, of a college of landowners, or yeah, there were non-landowner voters, but those were for congressional seats, legislative levels, not the not presidential, and certainly not the Senate. Those are all, but those tend to, they were still appointed by the legislature. It was like an indirect thing, which is better because what you don't want is people voting out individual liberties. That's just dangerous. The United States has had enough problems with that on the gun rights issue, even speech issue in many cases. It's you particularly don't want your negative rights being voted out, or you'll have done it all. That's the danger of those systems. So yeah, and God damn it, how are we going to be better? This is the worst thing. Is like they're bringing up kids. I'm not talking about 16 to 18-year-olds, you know, to try out the podium for the first time. You know, like even Thunberg was at least older than this, but I'm guessing she was doing it for a long back till she was 12, since she was 12. But that's the problem. I mean, we got to be better than them and not exploit children because they're cute and stuff. We shouldn't be getting the awe crowd and stuff like that, and we should be, if we're going to push any type of liberty, we shouldn't be exploiting children. There shouldn't. I've always been advocating against sweatshop politics, and it's becoming a little too frequent at these things, where we find children being used as props to get that awe factor. We got to be better than that. That's a leftist trick. That's leftist bullshit. That's part of propaganda. I mean, cuddly animals can be a little bit taking things a little too far, but I mean, animals aren't human beings. But I mean, you put a dog up there. I mean, I got a cute German Shepherd, but you know, Biden's got a German Shepherd, and so did Hitler. So I mean, it doesn't necessarily make you a better person. Although I'd say it does mean there was some level of taste involved with those people that I can't exactly challenge. But I'll digress in that point of view. And as we move into the concept of hero worship, which is a danger also in libertarian and populist beliefs more than anything. And where we can look at this is there was the factor of Harry Browne and figures like that in the libertarian parties, where I think it affected Canadian libertarian parties less so far. Although they did have a bit of a hero worship for Mark Emery, and they still do, and he got twists in the wind sometimes. He supported socialist parties and stuff like that because he's a one-issue guy. And having hero worship for one-issue guys is especially crazy. I mean, yeah, and he was I usually took issue with Emery because I found his arguments were the worst, too. I spend more time challenging his arguments on things I agree with than really just being able to agree with him, because I just wanted him to realize that maybe he needs better arguments because the average person wants better arguments. Then they're not going to think about these issues the same way like that. I mean, he almost got he every time I was basically kind of pushed. I kind of started thinking, maybe drug laws are a good idea because of this guy. Every so often, I was a little worried because he made the drugs look like a cult, which was really concerning. Now, we go to populists, which tend to really have this thing, this problem. And a good example is H. Ross Perot. Now, Perot was a very good, solid candidate when he started out, and he was a very good, solid candidate even the second time around coming in. However, it became more of a cult personality, and when Pat Buchanan ran, they ended up deciding, because the Perot loyalists were kind of losing, well, they got comfortable they had this Reform Party, and they were the establishment in the Reform Party, and suddenly they liked being an establishment somewhere. And they had this unhealthy worship of Perot, and somehow they never thought anybody could replace Perot, so they invite Buchanan to run. Buchanan runs, he replaces a few people and makes them, some of his supporters end up being higher up in the party ranks and pushing people aside, and they start doing the same thing Republicans did to Buchanan, and same things Democrats did to Buchanan, like call them epithets and homonyms. And then even though he had Rothbard supporting him, of all people, and he was pretty. I mean, he was socially. He had I guess he was a voluntary view of social conservatism. He didn't really have a hugely legislative view of it. He just had an opinion that tend to. People have that problem usually a lot of the time. Even on YouTube, when people start complaining about posts and stuff like that, they say, "Oh, I thought you believed in liberty and free speech and stuff like that." Well, it's just criticizing speech. I'm not saying ban it. People say things, they have a right to be criticized for it. Because that's more speech, challenging more speech, and challenging more speech, that's discussion. That's debating, that's arguing, that's, discourse. But what we have, anyway, and pro guys got really crazy. I mean, they were dragging Hegel into the natural law party, you know, the yogic flyers, which I think they might have gotten to the freedom thing too. Because I've been seeing the Common Ground newspaper a lot more. And I think that's one of those granola things that, it's one of those granola papers that had a lot of TMers involved with, at least at some point. The New Agora kind of seems like that too. It kind of seems like a very granola chewing, transcendental meditation-y type thing. Anyway, yeah, so they drag Haley into it, have a rum convention. At the same time, they also drag Trump into it, try to get him to get forced as a popular vote winner of a delegate count election for, you know, presidential candidate. And they actually managed to get Trump to get the popular vote, but the college ended up going. They ended up being suits and stuff like that. Well, they played such a disturbing, manipulative game that I think Trump learned something from that too, oddly enough. I think that whole system made him suspicious of the party system. Probably trained him to be ready for Republicans because, you know, it's sort of a dirty trick they would do. Anyway, probably did try it anyway. But yeah, it's just crazy. Because they brought in Trump a real last minute after all the conventions were done, and they tried to treat the conventions like there was nothing. Anyway, that's the thing. There was a hero worship of Ross Perot, basically destroying the Reform Party he built. Just on hero worship and trying to keep their own establishment after being kept out of establishments for a long time in party history. Now, that is the thing to worry about. You're going to ask yourself, is Bernier a good candidate? I mean, he's a member of the Privy Council. Or is he more of a hero to you? That's an important distinction. Would the fact that he's too much of a hero to you deviate from actually successfully mounting campaigns and elections? You say that about Mark Friesen. You'd never say that about Tim Moen. I mean, that guy just doesn't. I don't know why he stays, because he doesn't ever want to do anything. Yeah. But you could say that about Sloan. Could potentially be more of a hero than an effective figure. I guess you could say that about Chris Sky, but I mean, he's enjoying it, but he's probably rather reluctant about these things. But you can see that. You have to figure out, is he more your hero, or is he an effective candidate? Is he more of a hero, or is he an effective leader? And things like that. You got to think of that more than anything. I mean, and I worry that certain libertarians aren't even effective without being led, and that really doesn't seem very libertarian. You have to wonder, are you effective with not being led? Because the most effective thing is if you are your own leader. Hell, be your own hero, too. I mean, it's not self-worship, because, as I say, hero worship would be ineffective. I mean, if you're good. But, be your own leader. Don't be led by personalities. Don't be led by don't be led and controlled. The ideals you believe in, the policies you believe in, the future you want, that needs to be that needs to be what goes on. That needs to be the important thing. That should, if you're going to worship, if you're going to follow and hero worship anything, it should be the policies and principles, actually more to the point, principles that you like the best, that you find are the most important to you. That is ideal. We'll just be, or we'll never ever see freedom. We'll never see liberty. And a lot of these people who get for hero worship, they'll realize it can be a pretty good cash cow to lie on. And they might not want freedom and liberty. Actually, I mean, you'll find that basically there are think tanks full of these people. And think tanks don't want liberty. Libertarian think tanks don't want liberty. It's a cash cow. And personalities aren't that much different. Oh Christ, don't ever trust the Atlas, because then Atlas groups to try to fight for liberty, or at least in an election context. They'll use words and stuff like that. I mean, look at Reason Magazine. Nick Gillespie photographed of Reason Magazine. Nick Gillespie photographed his vaccination ticket. It was pretty cringy when you're doing the selfie, but I mean the whole vaccination ticket. I mean, Jesus Christ. And he was saying this is to avoid fear. It's part of the fear, fucker. I mean, really, it's part of the damn fear. It's part of that whole thing where we should be fighting. Gillespie is kind of a folk hero of libertarianism too. And I know people are going to be pissed off if they hear this, because they're going to love their heroes. And I suggest, you don't have to listen to me. You listen to yourself. Ask yourself, is this guy a hero to me, and am I worshiping him a little bit much? Am I not listening enough to what he says? Am I not doing enough background on them? I mean, Maxime Vernier, anybody who's, I could bring it up, I guess. Anybody who's, a former, anybody who's a former, I think I brought it up before, about the Privy Council. Anyone who's been a minister of the Crown is a member of the Privy Council for life. Part of the deal. Now, it's one thing if they end up getting there and they challenge it. But Bernier isn't exactly attacking the Privy Council ever. In fact, he never mentions it, which should be concerning. Where is that list here? I was trying to go through my posts, but there's so many posts in a lifetime, right? I guess I could just post it again on this wonderful platform. I'll put it in here. So groups are a good way to separate these things. Bear with me. Those in the audio area. I'm trying to find something important. It's not. Well, I can bring up the image in an image window, I guess. Image. Where is this? We're gonna get display capture up there. Image. Oh, that's the Gab thing, by the way. I was running my scrolling. Let's see. Privy Council, here we go. Yes. Members of the Privy Council are cabinet ministers, former cabinet ministers, Chief Justice of Canada, former Chief Justices. By the way, the president of the Privy Council is basically Trudeau's boss. Well, the boss other than his wife. Former Speakers of the House of Commons, former Speakers of the Senate, former Governor Generals, and distinguished individuals as a mark of honor. I'm guessing maybe, I guess it could be Jen Narveson, Border of Canada people. And I haven't seen Jen mention that one. But is he even alive still? Never heard of him dying. Haven't heard from him, period. Anyway, I can go here, Canada.ca, EN, Privy Council, with a dash between Privy and Council, Services, Queen's HTML. And that's the Queen's Privy Council. Sort of our version, I guess the closest thing Canadians get to aristocratic levels. But Jason Kenney, as I mentioned in the previous thing, is also a member of the Privy Council. It's possible that he himself is serving at the luxury of the Privy Council, not as premier, when he puts on this COVID policy. As a member of it and as a consortium. Of course, he's always been a bit of a worm anyway. He was part of the United Alternative that turned the Reform Party into a, well, just dragged the memberships by force of the Reform Party by force into the Conservative Party, keeping the Conservative Party alive. Speaking of, that's another thing some of the hero worship has also done. Although, to be fair, there was a lot of pushback against the United Alternative. The Reform Party did in the top brass area was lie about certain members like me who were against it, and just after taking our renewals, so they used our money for the United Alternative either way. They had us removed as members. So they used, imagine the Reform Party of all things using the Nazi word to get their way. Yeah, that's the I knew this because I knew a guy who were at these meetings who was a stand-up guy, and told me straight out what they were saying. Yeah, so that's a funny thing. And as a person who gets called a dirty Jew a lot, which is very confusing since I remember my confirmation very well, it's really weird. Well, anyway, that's that. And that's Blighters Matters, hero worship. And until next time, I think I might stream a little later. All right. Thank you very much.